A tortured noble boy dies only to awaken years in the past with a second chance. Once a completely useless, no-power virgin noble, he now hides his cursed weakness while secretly training and gaining forbidden power. From slaying monsters to surviving betrayal and kidnapping, he becomes a shadowy mastermind, building deadly allies and preparing to crush the enemies who destroyed his family. Our story kicks out under a bright moon. A grand castle hid a terrible secret deep inside its cold stone dungeon. A young boy hung from heavy metal chains, his body covered in blood from brutal torture. A cruel white-haired noble named Lord Sans mocked him mercilessly while holding a glowing hot iron. Sans laughed at how Colin completely lacked his family's famous talents, but somehow managed to survive the pain. The evil noble refused to grant the boy's wish for death, wanting to keep his favorite victim alive. Sans reminded him that exactly 3 years had passed since he completely destroyed the proud Sermon family. He remembered how his ancestors once bravely guarded their lands from endless waves of terrifying demonic monsters. They were the strongest noble house until his father and brothers suddenly vanished, leaving the family unprotected. The wicked Parton family immediately attacked them, desperate to steal the special dragon magic hidden in their blood. Normally, this magical bloodline created incredibly powerful warriors and wizard masters by the time they were young teenagers. However, our boy never received these amazing powers because he was born with a terrible Demon King's curse. He possessed absolutely no magic or fighting skills, which made him completely helpless to protect his noble home. As he bled on the cold floor, the young man deeply regretted his total lack of strength and power. He knew that if he had been strong, he could have stopped the enemies and escaped this brutal torture. Completely exhausted from the endless pain, he closed his tearful eyes and finally accepted his slowly approaching death. As large hungry rats gathered around his dying body in the dark, a massive burst of magical energy exploded. A gigantic demonic dragon spirit suddenly appeared before him, surrounded by bright green and purple magical lightning. The mighty glowing spirit reached out to the dying boy and formally promised to grant his deepest wish. Suddenly, he gasped for air. A worried blonde maid quickly rushed to his side, calling him her young master and asking if he was okay. The shocked protagonist immediately recognized the worried girl as his old family nanny, but she looked incredibly young. Looking out the nearby window, he saw his grand family estate standing perfectly intact under a bright blue sky. Realizing something completely impossible had just happened to him, he frantically shouted for Colin to bring him a mirror. The confused maid quickly scrambled to obey his sudden command as the young man prepared to check his own reflection. The shocked young master quickly asked the flustered maid named Colin about the exact current date. She nervously replied that it was August 17th in the year 1892. He gasped in pure disbelief, realizing he had miraculously returned to when he was exactly 12. This specific year marked the tragic beginning of his grand family's brutal destruction by their enemies. Remembering the glowing golden spirit's magical promise, he finally understood his desperate dying wish actually turned back time. Suddenly, a tall, stern older man with long white hair walked into the sunlit bedroom. Our boy immediately recognized the imposing veteran figure as Alejandro, the respected knight commander of his family. Alejandro noted the boy looked genuinely unwell and strictly ordered him to skip today's combat training. However, the newly determined young man immediately refused the break and firmly asked what they were practicing. The seasoned knight commander stood completely stunned by this rare, unexpected eagerness from the young master. Regaining his normal composure, Alejandro slowly explained that today's martial lesson focused entirely on basic longsword footwork. Watching the boy stand confidently by the warm fireplace, the veteran knight quietly questioned his true identity. Clenching his small fists, he introduced himself as Ryun Sermon. Then he accepted his miraculous regression and completely dismissed his previous painful life. A powerful blue glowing swordsman spirit suddenly appeared behind him as he planned to hunt dangerous monsters immediately. Staring ahead with fierce glowing blue eyes, the reborn noble swore to violently set his family's future right. Ryun's sermon gazed at a floating golden status window, revealing his weak physical stats and a mana level of 0. The screen confirmed he still carried Arkan's curse. He realized that this unique interface was a power no one else on the continent possessed. Alejandro entered the room to announce that the captured monsters were finally ready for their scheduled training session. Standing in the center of the massive stone courtyard, the protagonist faced a snarling green goblin chained to a post. The creature lunged violently, its eyes glowing with a feral yellow hunger as it snapped its jagged teeth. Colin watched from the sidelines with a worried expression, begging the knight commander to stop the dangerous exercise immediately. She reminded Alejandro that in the past, the young master would faint from pure terror just by looking at a goblin. Rian acknowledged his former cowardice, but remained perfectly still as the monster shrieked and clawed the air. Suddenly, a series of red system alerts flashed before his eyes, warning him that the Demon King's curse was activating. The magical burden increased his natural fear of monsters, manifesting as a terrifying blue skull hovering over his head. Alejandro noticed the boy's hesitation and offered to end the lesson, but our hero firmly refused to back down. He knew he had to overcome this mental wall if he wanted to survive the coming family tragedy. With a determined glare, he clutched his wooden practice sword and prepared to strike the screeching beast. Ryun realized that the fear caused by the curse was nothing compared to the true horrors he faced before. He visualized a massive, glowing golden knight behind him, channeling his inner strength to shatter the magical suppression. With a sudden burst of speed, he swung his weapon and delivered a crushing blow to the goblin's head. A notification appeared confirming the curse level had been downgraded because he achieved a transcendent experience by facing his fear. The protagonist stood tall over the defeated creature, no longer feeling any of the paralyzing terror from before. Turning toward the stunned knight commander, the young man boldly requested a real steel sword to continue his training. Alejandro and Colin stared in complete silence, shocked to see the once frail boy acting like a true warrior. The veteran knight felt a surge of pride, realizing the future head of the Sermon family had finally become a man. With a swift and bloody strike from the new blade, Ryun ended the goblin's life to test his growth. He felt a small increase in experience, but knew he needed to kill thousands more to reach his goals. While washing his face later, our hero reflected on the potential to grow stronger by surpassing the demonic curse. He felt a sense of urgency, knowing his father and brothers had already been missing for 2 years. The enemies of House Sermon were likely already plotting their destruction, and he had very little time to prepare. To find another way to level up, he requested a meeting with the family's mysterious magic division leader. A woman with long red hair and a blue mask named Sena sat across from him in the lounge. Sena questioned why the talentless young master would suddenly ask for magic training after his successful goblin hunt. She reminded him that magic required a natural affinity for mana, something his cursed body had always completely lacked. Ryun remained calm, recalling how the curse had robbed him of every drop of magical potential until just yesterday. He looked at the powerful archmage with a confident smile, shocking her by asking what would happen if he could feel mana. Sena used her immense magical power to draw a hidden image in the air made of pure mana. Our hero didn't blink as he correctly identified the drawing as a red dragon, stunning the powerful archmage. She stared at Ryun, unable to comprehend how the boy had changed so drastically in a single night, as she had even added a fake layer of energy to trick him, yet he saw through it easily. The protagonist explained that while he could finally feel mana, his cursed body still couldn't actually use it. He asked Sena for her direct help with mana cultivation, a process that would be incredibly dangerous for him. This secret method required her to force her own magical energy deep inside his body to jumpstart his core. Sena warned him that doing this would essentially place his entire life and survival in her trembling hands. Ryun just smiled, trusting her completely because of the loyalty she showed him in his tragic previous life. Years ago, when the family fell, a blood-soaked Sena had protected Ryun until her very last breath during the massacre. He remembered her sacrifice vividly as he knelt on the floor, preparing his bare chest for the ritual. Sena began the Blue Earth cultivation, a secret technique reserved only for the main members of the noble family. Ryun knew this exact method from his past life, and prepared himself for the agonizing pain about to follow. He gritted his teeth, determined to reclaim his lost strength through this brutal and legendary training. As Sena poured her mana into him, the system screamed with red alerts that Arkan's curse was actively fighting back. The dark curse tried to wipe the mana out while the Archmage desperately tried to force the energy in. Ryan felt like his very veins were on fire, but he refused to scream or lose his focus. He realized he could use his advanced knowledge to trap the exploding mana inside his body instead of leaking. By tricking the curse, he managed to retain the power, leaving Sena absolutely breathless at the impossible feat. In his mind, Ryun saw flashes of his darkest memories where he was tortured as a test subject by enemies. He remembered the cruel Parton family scientists discussing how to discard him like trash after cutting off his limbs. He also saw a vision of Alejandro, covered in arrows and blood, apologizing for being too late to save him. These painful images fueled his rage and gave him the mental strength to endure the current magical torture. Waking up in his bed, the young master realized the cultivation was a success, though the memories ruined his mood. He looked at his hand, which now glowed with a faint, golden magical light that he had finally earned. Ryun knew he had to keep this secret for now, especially since the treacherous House Parton was watching closely. He clutched his fist, deciding that his next move was to actually make the Sermon family collapse even faster. Ryun sat up in bed and delivered shocking news to Sena and Alejandro, claiming he failed the mana cultivation. The two veterans stood in stunned silence as the boy apologized for being unable to produce even a shred of energy. He decided it was safer to keep his success a secret until he could fully protect himself from his enemies. Sena performed a mana detection spell to verify his claim and was baffled to find his magical energy completely gone. She left the room in visible distress, unable to explain how the potential she saw yesterday had simply vanished overnight. Alejandro tried to comfort the young master, urging him not to be disappointed since he still showed great promise in combat. Ryun faked a discouraged expression, telling the knight he doubted he could ever attempt the painful cultivation process a second time. Outside, 2 months passed as the bright autumn leaves turned into the cold, biting snow of winter. The servants began to gossip about how the young master had become a total shut-in, never leaving his private room. Colin watched the family portrait with deep sadness, sensing the once great noble house was slowly reaching its limit. They believed the young master's previous victory over the goblin was just a lucky dream that had finally ended. Many employees began quitting as the family's finances crumbled, with even the quality of the daily meals dropping significantly. Ryun ate his dinner in silence, secretly pleased that his plan to hasten the family's collapse was working perfectly. He knew that by letting the enemies believe he was trash, they would finally let their guard down. In the dead of night, the protagonist engaged in brutal physical training, performing handstands and intense body control exercises. He used secret skills from his past life to deceive anyone watching into thinking his body remained weak and unskilled. System alerts began to flash, showing his level rising to 3 and his physical stats climbing steadily into the teens. Ryun grinned with fierce determination as he felt his strength and agility increasing with every passing day of secret practice. He planned to master the Ghost and Necromancer classes to become an unstoppable force before the real war began. One morning, Alejandro arrived at the training grounds accompanied by a man named Truno Hilda, the family's general manager. Truno apologized for the interruption and handed Ryun a formal scroll that carried a heavy and significant weight. The protagonist realized the timing was different from his previous life, but he knew exactly what the letter contained. It was an official invitation to the birthday party of Kyle Darren, the second prince of the powerful Darren Kingdom. He clutched the scroll, his eyes glowing with a cold light as he realized the final puzzle piece was now set. Ryun yawned as his carriage traveled through a bright green forest toward the royal capital of the Darren Kingdom. Trueno noted that the young man had been sleeping soundly since their departure from the family estate. The protagonist joked that his fatigue came from Colin making him try on endless outfits late into the night. It had been a struggle just to convince the energetic maid to stay behind while he traveled. Ryun realized he was on his own since both Alejandro and Sena were away on urgent family duties. Alejandro had been dispatched to the border to defend against a sudden and massive horde of Darkland monsters. Meanwhile, Sena was forced to attend a summons from the family matriarch who was currently managing affairs abroad. Trueno assured the young master that no one in the kingdom would dare harm a member of House Sermon. Ryun looked out the window, knowing that while his house was once respected, it was now in deep ruin. He had intentionally created this weak image to draw out the hidden enemies waiting for their chance. As they arrived at the capital city of Deroren, the grand white palace stood tall under a bright sun. A large group of servants and knights lined the red carpet to welcome the distinguished guests to the party. Ryun stepped out of the carriage, immediately sensing the heavy stares and mockery from the gathering crowd of nobles. Rumors had spread that he was an irredeemable scoundrel and a definitive omen of his noble family's total downfall. He walked past the whispering aristocrats with a hidden smile, knowing that everything was proceeding exactly as planned. Suddenly, a noble with long, light-colored hair and a red suit named Zanz Peyton entered the palace ballroom. Zanz approached Trueno with a smug grin, mocking the head butler about the renowned reputation of the Sermon family. He spoke loudly about Ryun being the biggest scoundrel on the continent to further humiliate the declining noble house. Trueno trembled with rage as Zanz pretended to care about the source of such terrible rumors and insults. The young man stood quietly, watching the villain who would eventually become his most brutal and heartless torturer. Ryun stepped forward and addressed Zanz, mentioning he had heard a great deal about him from his brother Lars. He leaned in and whispered into the villain's ear about the dark rumors surrounding Zan's time at the academy. Our hero brought up how Zanz allegedly helped students, subtly threatening to expose the noble's past violent and cruel behavior. Zan's smug expression immediately shattered into a look of pure, murderous rage as Ryun walked away with Trueno. The protagonist wanted the villain to get even angrier because his fury was a vital seed for the plan. Inside a quiet room, a furious Sans Parton violently shattered a glass against the floor. The angry man cursed Ryun's sermon while breathing heavily in pure frustration. He angrily remembered a blonde student revealing that everyone knew he was actually expelled from school. Sans felt deeply humiliated knowing his bitter rival discovered his hidden, shameful academic secret. The proud noble vividly recalled the painful memory of being forced to kneel before his enemy. During that past incident, Sans aggressively attacked a helpless blonde female student with his powerful magic. A blonde rival quickly intervened and fiercely demanded Sans beg for forgiveness on his knees. Threatened with immediate death, the humiliated white-haired noble reluctantly kneeled on the glowing magical floor. Returning to the present, a heavily sweating Sans viciously planned to silence young Ryun completely. Suddenly, the Sermon family's chief steward surprisingly entered his quiet room late at night. Under a bright full moon, Ryun traveled safely inside a heavily guarded horse carriage. The young protagonist confidently smiled, knowing his clever plans at the recent party worked perfectly. He successfully tricked everyone into believing he was just a completely useless, talentless young noble. The old steward praised his satisfying behavior, hoping the Sermon family still had a bright future. Ryun quickly activated a glowing red soundproof magical barrier inside the moving wooden carriage. Glaring with intense glowing eyes, Ryun boldly accused the shocked steward of completely betraying their family. The terrified older man sweated nervously, desperately wondering how the young master discovered his secret. Ryun calmly offered the frightened traitor one final chance to redeem his unforgivable past crimes. The crying steward felt absolute shock witnessing the boy's incredible hidden intelligence and flawless planning. However, the old man quickly realized Ryun's confident smile actually hid a terrifying, deadly killing intent. Suddenly, the fast-moving carriage violently stopped in the middle of a dark, quiet forest road. The carriage driver tragically died instantly as dark purple poison dripped from his pale face. Glowing magical purple arrows rained down from the dark trees in a massive surprise ambush. Protective yellow magical shields quickly appeared as the brave guards aggressively defended the surrounded carriage. A panicked guard opened the carriage door and shockingly discovered the young master had completely vanished. A magical horse galloped through the dark forest, carrying a hooded figure and the captured young master. Ryun felt several status effect spells activating on his body, including sensory disturbance and a total blackout. He noted that in his past life, this kidnapping caused House Sermon to crumble while searching for him. This time, he planned to use the faked downfall to his advantage and advance his secret timeline. The protagonist remained calm, knowing that spreading rumors about his own incompetence had successfully lowered the enemy's guard. Sans Parton laughed maniacally as he received a secret report from Trueno Hilda in a moonlit clearing. The traitorous steward had sold out his young lord for information regarding Ryun's missing older brothers. House Parton used their superior wealth to outbid everyone and secure this valuable intelligence from the prestigious Asan family. Sans dismissed Trueno, calling him a dog that bit its own master, and promised to return Ryun uninjured. The villain felt his grand plan was finally moving toward its climax as he prepared to dispose of the steward. Later, Ryun found himself suspended by heavy metal chains in a dark stone dungeon beneath the palace. Sans mocked the boy's helpless appearance, grabbing his hair and sneering about his family's impending total destruction. He revealed that Ryun's father and brothers were already dead, leaving House Sermon with absolutely no protection. The villain boasted that the kidnapping was merely the foundation for a full-scale war against the declining noble house. Ryun simply smirked through the blood on his face, telling the arrogant noble that he talked far too much. The protagonist suddenly activated a glowing green magic circle that erupted from his chest with immense power. He successfully resisted all the status effects and suppressed his mana level to lure the enemy closer. A bright green light exploded from Ryun's body as he activated a powerful magic circle within the dark dungeon. He looked at Sans with a chilling glare, revealing that he had waited for this specific moment since his return. Sans watched in total shock as the boy he thought was a weakling suddenly manifested an overwhelming and terrifying presence. The villain struggled to comprehend how Ryun was standing after pulling what he believed was just a cheap trick. Ryun smirked, calling Sans an idiot and reminding him that he talked way too much during his failed torture session. Suddenly, Sans clutched his throat in agony as a silence magic circle effectively sealed his voice and high-tier magic. Desperate, the noble tried to cast a firebolt spell that didn't require chanting, but the protagonist easily resisted it. Ryun noted that Sans's magic was far below his current level, making the kidnapping attempt a fatal mistake. Ryun revealed that he had spent the last 3 months secretly mastering advanced skills like stealth and mana refining. He explained that his past experience allowed him to perceive magical circuits, letting him obtain new abilities without any repetitive training. While the family believed he was a shut-in, he was actually slipping out of the mansion to set traps. He had memorized the dungeon's structure and prepared everything necessary to capture the villain who once caused him so much pain. The young master stood over his former torturer, holding a blood-stained dagger and radiating a cold, murderous intent. Using a forbidden technique, Ryun carved a blood magic circle directly into Sans's flesh to amplify every ounce of pain. The villain screamed silently as the protagonist turned the tables, showing absolutely no mercy to the man who ruined his family. He mocked Sans for being a dead man walking, knowing the noble had sent his subordinates away to enjoy the torture alone. Ryun realized the Parton family would eventually find out, but by then, his own preparations for war would be complete. Leaving the bloodied noble behind, the reborn hero walked away, ready to begin the next phase of his resurrection. Sans Parton's elite guard, known as the Finger, arrived at the dungeon to check on the kidnapping operation. 1 week had passed without word from Sans, causing his subordinates to worry that he had gone too far with his torture. The lead agent decided to enter the chamber alone, ignoring his soldiers' concerns about the eerie lack of mana in the air. He didn't realize that Ryun had spent the entire week turning the dark stone hallway into a lethal magical death trap. As the agent stepped inside, a series of glowing green magic circles instantly activated on the floor and walls. The protagonist appeared in the shadows, revealing that he had been waiting specifically for a high-ranking target to enter. The agent tried to cast a powerful 7th circle spell, but Ryun's traps caused a mana backflow that made him cough up blood. Our hero mocked the elite mage, telling him that relying solely on high-tier magic was a fatal mistake against an expert trapper. Ryun used his illusion magic to create multiple copies of himself, surrounding the disoriented and injured elite agent. The villain sneered at the pathetic trick and used a massive purple explosion to clear the room of all the fakes. However, the real young master had used the distraction to close the distance and strike from a completely different angle. The agent managed to knock Ryun back, claiming a simple dagger could never penetrate his professional armor or stop a master. Suddenly, a blood-covered figure lunged from the side and stabbed the agent directly through his throat with a jagged blade. The elite guard gasped in horror as he realized the person attacking him was actually his own master, Sans Parton. Sans's body moved with a strange, jerky rhythm, his eyes reflecting a consciousness that was no longer entirely his own. He had successfully trapped Sans' soul and was now using the noble's unconscious body as a literal human puppet. The agent realized that killing Ryun was now impossible because doing so would violate the family head's absolute command to keep him alive. The protagonist's real trump card was turned against the enemies, leaving the elite guard helpless and trapped in a nightmare. As the dungeon echoed with the sounds of a final magical struggle, a massive explosion of fire consumed the entire room. The agent's staff shattered as his body was thrown into the stone wall by the overwhelming force of the mana trap. Ryun watched the flames with a cold, satisfied expression, knowing he had finally neutralized the immediate threat to his house. With the elite guards defeated and Sans under his control, the reborn noble took his first major step toward total revenge. Ryun stood over the defeated elite agent, realizing his level had miraculously jumped from 2 all the way to 15. He quickly used a healing potion to treat his injuries and unlock a new pain-resistant skill for his growing collection. The protagonist then turned his attention to a complex magical ritual, using Sans Parton's body as a literal vessel for his next move. He explained that magical circuits are engraved into the soul, allowing him to use his own skills even while possessing another. The system warned Ryun that every bit of mana used in this state would cause his overall level to drop significantly. Despite the risk, he successfully fulfilled the additional requirements to unlock the assassin class's hidden job known as Shadow. He then pushed his limits even further, aiming to unlock a second hidden job to maximize his growth potential. Red alerts flashed as his soul was injured during the process, but he refused to stop until his goal was met. In a state of pure agony, Ryun visualized the brutal memories of his past torture to fuel his unyielding mental strength. He swore that even if he had to offer up his soul, he would obtain the ultimate power he lacked before. A massive surge of purple energy erupted from his body as the system confirmed his soul was large enough for the advancement. He successfully unlocked Phantom, a top-tier hidden job that surpassed even the legendary Ghost class from his previous life. With his new powers secured, the young master began the final and most important phase of his secret dungeon operation. He planned to use the body of the fallen 7-circle Archmage as the primary material for a forbidden creation spell. Although he was underleveled, his new Phantom passive abilities provided the necessary boost to attempt high-level necromancy. Ryun grinned, knowing that turning a powerful enemy into a loyal servant would drastically shorten his long road to revenge. The dungeon floor glowed with a massive dark magic circle as the protagonist officially activated the Lich Creation skill. However, the system suddenly announced that the Lich Creation had failed, immediately triggering an alternative special undead creation instead. A terrifying and regal figure clad in dark armor emerged from the swirling black smoke and purple magical lightning. Ryun watched with satisfaction as the ritual succeeded, and the system asked him to provide a name for his new summon. Meanwhile, a massive explosion rocked the dungeon entrance, drawing the immediate attention of the nearby Parton family guards. They rushed toward the source of the noise, frantically searching for any sign of young Master Sans. Suddenly, Ryun emerged from the smoke-filled corridor, carrying the battered body of Sans Parton on his back. He shouted at the guards, claiming that the agent named Ake had betrayed them all and attacked his master. The protagonist faked a look of pure rage, telling the confused soldiers that he managed to bind the traitor. He ordered the guards to buy him time while he escaped on horseback to bring the injured noble home. Ryun smirked privately as he rode away into the night, leaving the enemies to defend a completely empty dungeon. Elsewhere, the Parton family's 7th Circle mage, Lord Ferris, received a report about the incident at the border camp. He looked at the gathered guards with a murderous glare, realizing that the disappearance of Sans was a disaster. Fires suspect that a finger of the Parton family being involved in a kidnapping would spark a massive war. He violently executed a subordinate who failed to provide a clear explanation for the night's chaotic and mysterious events. The red-haired mage stood in the blood-stained tent, sensing that a much larger plot was unfolding around them. At that moment, Alejandro arrived at the scene, his blue mana flaring as he confronted the trespassing Parton forces. He demanded the immediate return of Ryun, warning that barging into Sermon territory would definitely spark a clan war. Both families stood on the brink of total conflict, neither side truly knowing where their young masters had gone. Later, Sena used the resonance of the blue earth cultivation method to track a faint magical trace in the woods. She discovered a hidden letter left by Ryun, which explained his decision to avoid a direct war for now. The protagonist noted that while he could destroy Parton from within, the Sermon family lacked the resources for war. He had chosen a third option to protect his household before disappearing to further increase his own growing strength. Sena burned the letter after reading it, realizing her young master was planning something far beyond their current understanding. Back in a sunny city, a young man walked through the market. A local merchant greeted him as Ryun, telling that the leader is waiting for him. That man is actually Ryun had assumed a new identity, hiding his true noble heritage to move freely. The protagonist was no longer just a weak noble, but the legendary Dragon of Drea returning to his peak. 3 months later, the city of Painton remained buzzing with rumors regarding the confrontation between House Parton and House Sermon. Citizens whispered about how a traitor had kidnapped the last Sermon bloodline, leading to a quiet settlement between the families. Despite the compensation, Ryun Sermon remained missing, leaving the public to wonder about the fallen noble house's true fate. At the Painton branch of the Martin Assassin Guild, a second-grade assassin named Sapphire grew bored with the repetitive news. She discussed the recent execution of General Manager Truno, who was killed by Alejandro for cooperating with the enemy. A veteran member named Duns welcomed Ryun into the guild, noting his rapid progress as a promising rookie. Sapphire approached the young man, presenting him with an official recommendation letter for the guild's permanent membership. She noted that Ryun had completed 10 years' worth of training in just 2 short months. Ryun accepted the letter calmly, knowing that only one final test remained before he could become an official member. Sapphire watched him with interest, recalling how he first arrived at the guild looking like a beggar with a massive sum of money. She remembered his bizarre request to essentially assassinate himself to prove his combat skills and resolve. Even though she investigated his background, his origins remained a complete mystery to the guild's most talented information gatherers. Ryun maintained his humble facade, hiding the fact that his current strength was far beyond a standard trainee. Back in his private room, our hero activated his status window to review his current progress and skills. His level had returned to normal after the job change, and his body control skill now allowed him to deceive magic detection. He summoned his special undead, which he officially named Kornak, a growing creature that possessed its own unique player stats. Ryun analyzed Kornak's skill circuit, discovering a hidden Avenger quest linked to the creature's mysterious and dark evolution. He realized that while Kornak consumed his experience points now, the undead would eventually become a powerful and essential ally. Later that night, Ryun stood atop a high stone tower with Duns and 2 other guild candidates. Duns explained that for today's final exam, there would be only one passer among the 3 young fighters. The mission required them to successfully assassinate a specific target to earn their place as a 5th-grade assassin. The exam officially begins under a bright full moon as the veteran instructor Duns prepares to reveal the objective. Standing atop the stone tower, Duns demands to know what the 3 trainees have learned about their high-profile target. The target is Alok, a 47-year-old merchant who runs a successful shop and is never seen without protection. He is always accompanied by 3 mercenary guards, consisting of 2 bronze-rank warriors and 1 silver-rank mage. Rumors also suggest that Alok recently took a young concubine and visits her private bedroom every single night. During these late-night visits, the mercenary guards stay away from the bedroom to give the merchant his privacy. Duns is impressed that the trainees gathered so much intel, but he questions how they can guarantee a visit tonight. Pala and Rip struggle to answer, realizing they didn't account for the possibility of the guards intervening anyway. Ryun stands silently as the instructor reminds them that only one person will pass this final guild examination. The protagonist refuses to share his own information, mocking the other two for thinking they were actually teammates. Duns notes that the nature of an assassin is to use or discard others whenever necessary to finish the job. He officially declares the start of the mission, giving them total freedom to assassinate Alak however they see fit. Duns watches Ryun, thinking the boy is interesting for his calm demeanor, while others rush into the chaotic fray. Moments later, Pala successfully infiltrates the mansion by destroying the alarm spells and mechanical traps near the outer walls. She avoids the primary mercenaries, but is shocked to find an even larger group of guards waiting inside the halls. The guards immediately spot her, forcing Pala to hide behind a stone wall while she tries to regain her composure. She realizes her plan was sloppy, and that the target has survived countless previous assassination attempts by using similar decoys. Alak flees the chaos and rushes toward the safest location in the house, which is his main wife's bedroom. Inside the bedroom, Alak's wife screams in fury, unable to stand his constant infidelity and his latest young concubine. She accuses him of taking money from her noble family just to buy expensive gifts for his new lovers. As Alak tries to make excuses, the woman suddenly draws a sharp dagger and plunges it deep into his chest. Pala watches from the shadows, stunned as the target is murdered by his own wife before she could strike. Pala returns to the meeting point on the tower, exhausted and bleeding after barely escaping the mercenary guards. She reports that the request was a failure because Alak was killed by his wife, not by the trainees. However, she is shocked to find Ryun already standing there with Duns, looking perfectly clean and completely uninjured. Duns claps his hands and declares that the assassination was not a failure because Ryun actually completed the request. The instructor reveals that Ryun used his powers like a puppeteer, manipulating the wife to commit the murder herself. Duns stared at Ryun in disbelief, demanding an explanation for how he manipulated Alak's legal wife into committing murder. Pala and Rip watched with frustrated expressions, unable to comprehend the rookie's terrifying level of foresight and planning. Ryun explained that the key to the entire mission was the volatile domestic situation between Alak and his wife. By gathering intel from local merchants, he identified Alak's illegal liquor business and his history of taking mistresses. He had spent his 2 months of training pre-studying every potential target in the city who had a bad reputation. The protagonist revealed that Alak's wife, Kelly, already harbored a deep grudge because Alak spent her family's money on mistresses. Ryun secretly approached the mentally cornered woman and suggested that she hire the assassin guild to terrify her husband. He convinced her that reinforcing the guards would force Alak to flee to the safest room, her own bedroom. Kelly fell for the plan easily, hoping Alak would return to his senses after a staged assassination attempt. Right before the exam began, Ryun leaked the information that Alak had stolen even more business funds for his mistress. This revelation, combined with an alchemical potion Ryun mixed into the house's liquor, clouded Kelly's judgment and amplified her anger. The potion made everyone in the house prone to sudden, violent outbursts, including the mercenaries who began fighting each other. Duns realized with a chill that the entire test had been moving perfectly within the young man's hands. Ryun successfully completed the job without ever having to draw his own blade against the primary target. Duns congratulated Ryan on passing the test, but questioned if the boy understood the weight of turning an ordinary woman into a killer. Furthermore, Kelly was no saint. As she had used her family's influence to murder every mistress Alak ever brought home, Ryun countered by revealing that Alak was a monster who ran drugs and gambling dens, destroying countless innocent lives. Ryan argued that an assassin's only concern is completing the request, regardless of the target's morality or the client's circumstances. The young man stated that if morality mattered, the profession would stop being murder and the guild wouldn't get paid. He told Duns that if he wanted to keep his humanity while being an assassin, he should focus on building absolute strength. Ryun explained that only by becoming strong enough to change things from the ground up could one truly ignore conscience. He then leapt from the tower, leaving the veteran instructor standing alone in the golden light of the setting sun. Sapphire stands before Ryun and a crowd of hooded assassins, holding an open scroll and officially congratulating him. She declares that as of this moment, he is an official member of the Martin Guild and a Grade 5 assassin. System notifications flash rapidly around Ryun, confirming the completion of his main quest along with several side quests. The instructor Duns looks on with high expectations as bonus experience points flood into Ryun's status window. Sapphire explains that as a Grade 5 assassin, Ryun can now accept official requests from the guild. She begins outlining the conditions for a promotion to Grade 4, noting that it usually requires a single request worth 30 gold or 10 successful Grade 5 missions. To her complete shock, Ryun interrupts and asks if those are the only conditions before immediately requesting a promotion to the next rank. Sapphire stares at him in disbelief, while the surrounding guild members whisper in a frenzy, stunned by the new member's boldness. He reminds her of the Alok request. He points out that he has already met the 30 gold financial requirement for advancement. Sapphire grows frustrated and releases a dark, menacing aura, warning Ryan that his arrogant attitude is insulting the hard work of every other assassin who spent years reaching grade 4. Dunn steps forward and asks to speak as the exam supervisor, calming the rising tension in the room. He admits that while Ryan succeeded in the assassination through a brilliant strategy, he hasn't yet proven his pure physical ability. The instructor suggests using the promotion exam as an opportunity to gauge Ryan's true combat skills or teach him a painful lesson. Sapphire relents and agrees to allow the exam, but she warns Ryan that he must be prepared to risk his very life. Ryan accepts the challenge with a confident smirk, shaking Sapphire's hand to finalize the dangerous agreement. Later that night, the group gathers at a local tavern to celebrate Ryan's official entry into the guild. Dunn slams his mug down, noting Ryan's knack for keeping people on edge, while Paula and Rip worry that his request was too rash. Dunn explains that a suitable target for a grade 4 trial won't be found for another month or two, and offers to train the boy in the meantime. Ryan politely declines the offer, stating his intention to leave the guild territory and rest until the exam is ready. The instructor is baffled by the choice to leave, but Ryan knows that official membership finally grants him the freedom to travel outside the branch's territory. He wipes a bit of foam from his mouth, looking toward the future with a cold and determined smile. While the others see a drink and a celebration, Ryan is already planning his next move to gain more power and reclaim everything his family once lost. Ryan reflects on the rare opportunity to relax as he finishes his meal with the others. He knows that once he reaches the 4th rank, official requests will become relentless, especially since his target is a branch leader. To stay ahead of the game, he realizes he must act immediately. He slips out of the guild gates at night, traveling alone toward the Dark Zone, a deadly land where few dare to tread. With a predatory smirk, he looks toward the horizon, prepared to face whatever dangers lie ahead. On the road to the Dark Zone, a noble carriage guarded by a small group of soldiers is suddenly halted. Ryan is sitting in the middle of the road, looking pathetic and helpless. Captain Kennel, a pink-haired knight, demands to know who is blocking their path. Ryan puts on an act, clutching his bandaged leg and pleading for a ride to the next village, claiming he might die in the cold if left alone. Kennel is annoyed by the daring brat who has the nerve to block a noble's carriage, but he is caught off guard when Ryan correctly points out that the carriage isn't on official urgent business, judging by the slow rhythm of the horse's hoofbeats. Amused and slightly impressed by the boy's sharp observation, Kennel relents when the young lady inside the carriage, Saintine Rose, gives the order to help. Kennel gruffly tells Ryan to get on the horse with him. As they ride, Ryan introduces himself as a traveler from Painton. While the knights see a lucky kid, Ryan reveals his true plan in his mind. His encounter with the Rose family was no accident. He had investigated their history and learned that Saintine Rose, a blood relative of the noble Rose family, was forced into exile after the sudden death of her father. Ryan's investigation uncovered a dark web of political betrayal. The Rose family's collapse traces back to conflicts between the Sermon and Parton families. The eldest Rose son had served as a knight under the Sermon family in the Dark Zone before being killed by a monster. Sermon promised to support the family, but the rival Ayani family conspired with the Parton family to take them down. Rumors suggest the Sermon family secretly assassinated the Rose family head to hide evidence of their own corruption. Now, the Rose family is powerless and heading into a harsh exile toward Darren. The night deepens as the group sets up camp. Ryan sits by the fire, observing the loyal but weary followers Kennel has gathered in haste. He looks toward the carriage where Saintine Rose is sleeping, knowing that the journey ahead will be anything but easy. On the other hand, night is quiet at the campsite. Captain Kennel explains that the exile was only possible because the Sermon family used their last remaining influence to get permission from the Darren Kingdom. He reveals that the Sermons even squeezed out their final resources to provide support for the journey. The knights raise their mugs in a somber toast to the Sermon family. One of the soldiers turns to Ryan, offering him another bowl of soup. Ryan accepts it with a smile, though Kennel wonders if the boy was bored by a story that seemingly has nothing to do with him. Ryan plays the part of a curious child, asking if it's really okay for him to hear such heavy stories since he's just a kid they picked up on the road. Kennel dismisses it, feeling a sense of relief after venting his frustrations. Ryan notices that while the knights are kind, they are dangerously inexperienced and don't realize the level of danger following them. Ryan's internal thoughts shift to the Ani family and their collusion with the Partons. He recalls information about Garuta Ani, the second son, a vicious, hopeless womanizer and a bastard who only picks on the powerless. Ryan knows Garuta is obsessed with his own protection. Realizing the danger is imminent, Ryan decides he can't just sit around. He slips into the dark forest, moving with a speed that contradicts his injured act. He begins digging traps at every choke point along the path to slow down the inevitable pursuit. Ryun returns to camp covered in dirt. The knights laugh, assuming the clumsy kid rolled around in the mud while trying to find the bathroom. They tell him to stay put and rest, unaware that he has just secured their perimeter. Ryun lies down, thinking that his connection with them will end at the next village anyway. The sun rises over the mountains. The group reaches a crossroads near Dasam village. Ryun thanks them for the ride, and Kennel asks what a kid like him is doing so close to the dark zone. Ryun lies, claiming he is a traveling merchant looking to buy monster materials to sell in Painton. Before they part ways, Kennel hands Ryun a high-grade healing potion, explaining that the young lady insisted he have it. Suddenly, the sound of galloping horses thunders through the air. A pursuit party of 6 arrives, led by the depraved Guruta Ani. Ryun observes them from the shadows. 2 mercenaries, 2 sword beginners, a dangerous-looking magician, and the noble himself. Ryun's traps weren't enough to stop them. Ryun looks at the high-grade potion in his hand and smirks that the potion is worth over 20 silver. He decides that between the soup and this expensive potion, he has been given a more than fair advance payment. He abandons his disguise, and a massive glowing green magic circle erupts beneath his feet. With a look of cold intensity, Ryun prepares for his first job as a player. He calls out the name of his summon, Kornak, as dark energy swirls around him, ready to intercept the hunters before they reach the carriage. Meanwhile, the exile carriage under Captain Kennel's protection is in a state of panic. Sensing the overwhelming presence of mana users closing in, Kennel orders Chaku and Guyan to take the young lady and sprint for the Darren border while he stays behind to buy them time. The pursuit party, led by Garuta Ani, finally catches up. Kennel stands his ground, drawing his sword and warning them to retreat or face no mercy. Garuta laughs at the pink-haired knight, mocking his status as a newly knighted soldier. He dismisses the need for secrecy, declaring that everyone except Sainton Rose must die. The battle erupts as Garuta's forces charge, and Kennel is quickly overwhelmed by a powerful mage of the second circle. Bloodied and battered, Kennel is shocked to see a familiar face among his enemies, Captain Ciso, the former captain of the Rose Knights. Ciso reveals that he threw away his chivalry for money, claiming that in the current world, loyalty to a fallen house like the Rose family is a death sentence. As Ciso prepares to deliver a finishing blow to Kennel, Ryun's familiar Kornak suddenly descends from the sky like a green flash of lightning. The sheer force of the impact shatters Ciso's defense and leaves him vomiting blood. Garuta and Ciso stare in disbelief at the strange, powerful creature, while Ryun watches from above. Back at the carriage, the situation is dire. Guyan and Chaku are at their limit, bleeding and exhausted as they realize the enemies are far beyond their level. Just as the mercenaries move in for the kill, Saintine Rose steps out of the carriage with a dagger. With unwavering eyes, she offers to go with the kidnappers voluntarily if they spare the lives of her followers. She warns them that her death would ruin their employer's plans. The lead mercenary scoffs, reminding her that outside of Darren's borders, she is neither a noble nor a person with any rights, giving him no reason to listen to her demands. Just as he prepares to use force to subdue her, a shadow streaks across the battlefield. Ryun descends with a brutal kick, slamming into the mercenary and sending him crashing into the dirt. Standing before the stunned group, Ryun pulls down his hood, revealing his face with a cold, mocking smile. He casually mentions that while he intended to use the soup and potion as a down payment, he officially introduces himself as an assassin from Martin. The mercenaries are baffled, questioning why a Martin assassin would ever help a fallen house like Rose. When Saintine realizes she has no other choice, she desperately offers 30 gold, everything she has. Ryun's smile widens into something predatory. He tells her that 30 gold is only enough to deal with the minor knight standing in front of her, but it is far too little to handle the high-level threats approaching. He pressures her to speak quickly, threatening to leave if a proper commission isn't established. Terrified of losing her only chance at survival, Saintine clasps her hands and screams that she will give him everything he wants if he protects House Rose. With a flash of green energy in his eyes, Ryun simply replies, "Accepted." The mercenaries grow enraged, mocking Ryun for revealing his identity so boldly. They claim that only a coward would hide behind a mask, but Ryun counters that a real assassin never makes mistakes, so they can afford to be confident. As he activates body control and physical acceleration, Ryun becomes a blur of motion. By the time they realize they can't even detect the flow of his mana, Ryun is already behind them. Looking back at the panicking brothers, he tells them with a lethal chill that it is already too late. At that moment, Ryun activates a barrage of curse-type skills, including physical weakening, blackout, and hearing impairment, completely neutralizing the enemy's senses. The mercenaries are paralyzed with fear, realizing that Ryun possesses abilities far beyond a normal assassin, even suspecting him of being a necromancer. As the green energy of his familiar tears through the air, Ryun tells them to feel the pain of those the Rose family lost before finishing the battle in a violent spray of blood. Moments later, the golden glow of the sunset washes over the battlefield. Captain Kennel, battered and blood-stained, limps toward the carriage and calls out to Lady Santan. He is visibly shaken, but relieved to see her standing unharmed alongside Ryun, Chaku, and Gayan. The knights are in disbelief, wondering how Kennel could have possibly fended off such high-level pursuers on his own. Kennel is forced to admit that they received help from a mysterious mage who appeared out of nowhere to take down the traitor Siso and capture the bastard Guruta Ani. Kennel stares at Ryun, finally putting the pieces together. He realizes that Ryon, the pitiful child he picked up on the road, is actually an official assassin from Martin. Ryun stands before Saintine, his expression calm but firm. He understands the current poverty of the Rose family and agrees to accept the 30 gold as an official Martin request, but he adds a condition. The remaining balance will be settled through a verbal contract, a secret known only between the two of them. Saintine, realizing the gravity of the pact, nods in silent agreement. Ryun tells them to gather themselves and continue toward their destination, promising that no more pursuers will follow. As he prepares to depart in a swirl of green mana, Kennel watches him go. They thought Ryan was just calling himself an assassin, but what he summoned was no ordinary undead. It was small, yet it spoke human language and defeated Siso and the mage. Controlling such a powerful undead isn't normal. There's a possibility he is the disciple of the legendary necromancer Veda. Saintin Rose, hearing this, looks toward Ryun with wide, shocked eyes. Kennel notes that while undead exist on the Drea continent, the one Ryun summoned was on an entirely different level, capable of using magic and facing multiple high-level opponents at once. Saintine quickly takes charge, turning to her men and ordering them to keep everything they witnessed strictly confidential. She clarifies that while news of Guruta Ani's death should spread to show the family's strength, Ryun's identity and information must remain a secret. Kennel and the other knights are stunned by her sudden change in demeanor. She is no longer the hopeless exile they once knew, but a woman with the sharp eyes and cool head of a true leader. She instructs Kennel to return to Painton and formally request the assassination of Guruta to finalize the path Ryun set for them. As the carriage moves on, Ryun watches from the woods, reflecting on the legend of Veda. He recalls the Black and White War, where black mages tried to summon the demon world and dyed the continent in blood. In that chaos, Veda appeared as a necromancer who was treated as a saint, healing the injured and restoring the people. Ryun knows that by showing Cornac, he successfully earned the knight's respect and trust. Now, he has to return to Darren someday. At that moment, he views saving Saintin not just as a mission for his current identity, Ryan, but as a long-term investment for his true self, Ryan, who intends to reclaim the fame he once lost. The sunset fades into a cold blue twilight as Ryun travels half a day away from Dasong village. He stands atop a jagged cliff, looking out over a massive glowing blue crater that descends deep into the earth. He has finally reached his destination, the starting point of the Dark Zone and the entrance to the 12th stratum. Ryun descends deep into the glowing blue abyss of the Dark Zone, reaching a depth where sunlight no longer penetrates. Despite the gloom, the area is filled with an eerie, unnatural light, yet surrounded by a darkness thick enough to swallow it. He recalls the history of this place, which was once a dungeon, a high tower, and a vast ocean studied by House Sermon. The Dark Zone is divided into stratums. The higher the number, the weaker the monsters. In this 12th stratum, Ryan faces a dense population of goblins, mutant beasts, and orcs. He notes that studying this area during his time in House Sermon was a wise choice, as its high density of monsters makes it the optimal hunting ground for a player to level up quickly. As he hunts, Ryan realizes that neither compasses nor maps work here. The only way to navigate is by sensing mana. He acknowledges that visitors are rare in this maze-like structure, allowing him to freely experiment with his necromancer abilities, powers he had to refrain from using in the outside world. He begins raising low-rank zombies from the fallen goblins to serve as meat shields. Activating the skill Hand of Death, he strengthens these undead and increases their duration. Surrounded by his growing army, Ryan decides to relieve some stress by slaughtering the endless waves of monsters. After clearing roughly 30 undead, Ryan contemplates his limits. He remembers that in his prime, he moved them in units of 10,000, but currently, the constant drain on his mana is his biggest hurdle. To replenish his insufficient mana, he sets his sights on the Stratum Guardian, a powerful boss monster known as the Minotaur. As he meditates to increase his mana stat, his skills Raise Zombie and Raise Skeleton improve. Suddenly, a notification appears. Cornac has found a bone she likes. By acquiring a goblin shaman's finger bone, Ryun's mana increases further, and he realizes with a grin that Cornac is a special type of undead that can actually grow. Ryun realizes that raising a rare entity like Kornak is far more beneficial than managing dozens of weak puppets. He prepares for his next experiment, utilizing a subspace skill called corpse storage, where he has kept several useful bodies. While then, he intends to use the rest for soul extraction. If his experiment succeeds, he will have the force necessary to face the Stratum Guardian. The air in the 12th stratum grows heavy as the ground tremors under the weight of a massive shadow. Ryun finds himself face to face with the Minotaur, the Stratum Guardian. The beast is a towering monstrosity of purple fur and raw muscle, its eyes glowing with a frenzied light. As the monster roars, Ryun notes that the creature is becoming increasingly agitated by the presences he has scattered around the battlefield. This is exactly what he planned. The more excited the beast becomes, the more inevitable its opening becomes. With a cold command of opening, Ryun strikes. He delivers a powerful blow, but as blood sprays, Ryun clicks his tongue in dissatisfaction. The wound is shallow. He changes tactics instantly. Ryun activates a sinister skill, wound aggravation. Dark, curse-type energy erupts from the shallow cut, tearing the Minotaur's flesh apart from the inside. The beast screams in agony as purple blood and dark miasma leak from its body. However, the pain only pushes the monster further into a berserk state, a skill that allows it to block out pain and pour out immense destructive power. The Minotaur swings its massive axe with renewed fury, shattering the cavern floor. Standing atop a glowing purple magic circle, he activates Raise Dead, summoning the corpses he had stored in his subspace. Among them is the high-level knight he defeated previously. To push his power even further, Ryun unveils a new method of growth, undead enhancement through soul sacrifice. By sacrificing the souls of a captured knight and a mage, Ryun permanently enhances Kornak's abilities. The small familiar undergoes a terrifying transformation, absorbing the knowledge and combat skills the souls possessed in life. Now empowered with the strength of a knight and the mana of a mage, Kornak leads the charge. Ryun activates Commander's Eye, viewing the battlefield with cold calculation. As the Minotaur's berserk state finally begins to flicker due to the poison and constant attrition, Ryun sees his chance. He commands Kornak to deliver the final blow. In a spectacular explosion of green and purple mana, the Guardian is overwhelmed. Ryun watches with a predatory grin as the massive beast finally collapses, its reign over the 12th stratum ended by the boy who commands the dead. Ryun points his finger at the charred remains of the Minotaur, activating his new ability, Life Absorption. As green mana swirls around him, he successfully drains 3 stamina and 1 mana from the fallen manslayer, though he quickly reaches the maximum absorption limit for his current level. System notifications flash rapidly, confirming the kill and awarding him special experience for hunting a named boss monster for the first time. Ryun gains a level while receiving a game-changing notification. His ability now allows for the soul extraction of the Stratum Guardian. Despite a success rate of only 57%, he realizes he can't pass up this opportunity. He channels his power, and with a roar of purple energy, he successfully extracts the manslayer's soul. However, he notices something strange. Usually, a monster's body vanishes and regenerates upon death, but the Minotaur's corpse remains in his hands. He suspects this is how the dungeon faces the next challenger, but he knows he must leave quickly before he is discovered by the Surminga Knights guarding the zone. A short time later, a group of high-level knights led by a female commander arrives at the scene. They are stunned to find traces of a massive battle and the undeniable proof that the manslayer has been hunted. The commander calculates that it would have taken at least 30 elite soldiers, including mages, to take down such a beast. She is baffled because no such group reported entry into the Dark Zone. Seeing the systematic and efficient traces of the attack, she concludes that this wasn't just a random strike. It was the calculated work of a single, highly experienced human. As the knights scramble to prevent other monsters from escaping the now unguarded 12th stratum, meanwhile, Ryun has already moved on to the 11th stratum, which looks vastly different, filled with lush greenery, lakes, and swamps. He stops in a secluded forest and pulls the manslayer's body from his corpse storage to investigate the final mystery. Ryun opens his status window and notices that his list of quests has grown significantly. The Path of the Necromancer and Path of the Soul have appeared following his recent hunt. System notifications flash as the Path of the Necromancer and the Path of the Soul merge into a single quest. The protagonist is caught off guard by the sudden transformation of his interface, watching as blue energy swirls violently around him. A new main quest titled Veda's Legacy Begins appears, causing him to wonder if he is truly following the footsteps of the legend. The system provides a clear objective. He must rebuild the Surminga family while achieving the rank of a Grade 4 assassin. Ryun notes that the system, which was once practically dead, has started working perfectly again, just like it did in Adeon. He wonders why this shift is happening now as a world quest specifically instructs him to raise the manslayer as an undead. He questions the connection between the manslayer and Veda as the path of revenge and his assassin job quest are updated. Our hero realizes that the only other world quest he ever received involved slaying a god, making this mystery even deeper. He decides the only way to find answers is to complete the quest and immediately prepares to perform a high-level ritual. Extending his hand over the beast's remains, he activates the Raise Dead skill to begin the summoning. The protagonist is shocked as his mana is drained at an incredible rate, feeling his energy being sucked out like crazy. A massive pillar of purple and black energy erupts from the ground, swirling into a violent vortex that shakes the cavern. From the shadows, a towering figure emerges, encased in heavy red armor and wreathed in dark, flickering flames. Rian stares at the creature, identifying it as a skeleton berserker rather than a standard undead like his familiar Kornak. System windows confirm that he has successfully raised the manslayer, but a new warning appears stating the unit is currently incomplete. To fully complete the manslayer, the system demands a hero's soul, leaving the young man frustrated by the sudden high requirement. He looks at the massive warrior, noting that it devoured an immense amount of mana, despite its current power being only a fraction of its potential. Rian grumbles about the terrible efficiency but decides to test his new servant's combat capabilities against the local monsters. He watches as the skeleton berserker easily tears through a pack of mutant wolves with brutal, sweeping strikes. Elsewhere in the Dark Zone, Ryun activates the Blue Earth breathing technique to search for a resonance with his lost brothers. He recalls the Hassan family's intel suggesting they were sighted nearby, but he feels no reaction from the surrounding area. Our hero wonders if his current power is enough to clear beyond the 10th floor to find more clues. Suddenly, his green eyes widen as the breathing technique begins to vibrate, indicating someone with the Serminga family technique is within range. He hides behind a tree, observing two figures approaching who are moving with the trained steps of experienced warriors. Right then, a red-haired woman named Sena surprises him from behind, grabbing him and commenting on how cute he has become. Ryun is startled as head manager Truno and the spy Jang emerge from the shadows to greet their young master. Truno explains that he used the traces Ryun left behind to guide the others to this specific location in the Dark Zone. He admits that if the protagonist hadn't used the breathing technique, they might not have recognized his new appearance. As they talk, a massive, glowing presence suddenly looms over Rian from the darkness behind him, ending the reunion with a sudden tension. A glowing blue presence looms in the darkness as a beautiful woman with flowing white hair steps forward, her eyes glowing with relief. She tells Ryun that she is glad he is safe, greeting him warmly after what feels like a very long time. The young man is momentarily frozen before whispering the word mother as he gazes at the woman who once prioritized the Sermon family's affairs above all else. He recalls his childhood resentment, remembering how rarely he saw her, yet he now understands she worked tirelessly to ensure he was the last one left protected. Elsewhere in the forest, Sena activates a massive green hexagonal barrier to ensure the group can talk freely without being overheard. Ryun notices Zhang's injured arm, and the knight explains it was a result of his own incompetence when the Paytons attacked the young master's carriage. Because the world believes he is dead, Zhang has been hiding in a temporary sanctuary within the Dark Zone with Sena's help. Meanwhile, Celine Sermon, the protector of the family, praises Rian for winning over the hearts of their loyal followers with his recent actions. She asks him to confirm if it is true that he defeated one of Payton's high-ranking fingers and handed over the prisoner to Sena. Ryun confirms that it was all part of his calculated plan to secure a massive compensation payment from the Payton family through mediation. His mother looks at him with a mix of pride and sorrow, wondering how her son could swallow his anger after being kidnapped just to achieve such a strategic result. Later, Celine looks deeply into Ryun's eyes, asking if he is truly her son because she senses a dark aura of death emanating from him. The protagonist realizes that as a holy knight, his mother has likely detected the traces of a necromancer within his soul. He knows that simple excuses will not work on her, nor will they suffice for Truno, Sena, and Zhang, who are all indispensable to his future progression. Our hero decides he must make them understand his transformation to ensure they move according to his plan without acting rashly or with doubt. Right then, Ryun begins to explain everything, claiming it all started with a vivid dream that he describes as a divine revelation. He details the horrific downfall of the Sermon family, where their territory burned during a war that the Darren Kingdom and other noble families ignored. In this vision, Colin and many retainers were slaughtered by the Payton family, while Ryun, his mother, and his sister Maria were taken as prisoners. He describes seeing Sena and Alejandro murdered before his eyes, followed by years of torture and experimentation until he finally died in the dark. The next moment, Ryun reveals that the dream allowed him to realize exactly who he is and what he is capable of doing to prevent that future. The veterans Truno and Sena watch in stunned silence as Ryun speaks with a terrifying level of realism. Truno notes that the boy sounds like a soldier fresh from a battlefield, recounting actual experiences rather than a child's dream. His words carry a weight of fear and vivid detail that leaves no room for doubt about his conviction. The protagonist remains calm, standing before his mother and explaining that he simply became aware of his destiny. Celine stares at her son, realizing the dream was the catalyst for all the recent life-changing events. Celine admits that while anyone else would be dismissed as absurd, Ryun's actions against the Peyton family prove his claims aren't groundless. She wonders if he experienced a divine revelation or a true glimpse into a dark future where the Sermon bloodline awakens. The matriarch realizes her son has been moving behind the scenes to prevent that horrific dream from becoming a reality. He has obtained the power necessary to defeat Peyton's high-ranking members and stand before her today in this dangerous zone. She looks at him solemnly, asking what his ultimate plan is for moving the family forward. Ryun asks if she truly believes his story, and Celine firmly responds that he is no longer just a child. She declares that everyone, including herself, will support his decisions as the one who will shoulder the family's future. The young man realizes he cannot back down now, knowing his mother would never tolerate a weak leader for their house. He boldly demands that the Sermon family must return their title of a great family to avoid an unwinnable war. This shocking proposal leaves the retainers in a panic, fearing they will lose their noble status and authority. The protagonist argues that a great family must have tangible power to stand above nations and influence the entire world. He explains that they must discard the title to hide under the protection of the continent's laws and kingdom. By making a tactical retreat, they can lure the Peyton family into a trap instead of facing a direct massacre. Ryun also insists that his sister Maria must be brought back immediately, as she is essential for his future plans. Celine listens intently, eventually agreeing to return the title, admitting it is the right choice to avoid unnecessary sacrifices. Suddenly, the air grows heavy as Celine draws her sword, her expression shifting from a mother to a fierce matriarch. She tells Ryun that by claiming leadership, he must now take full responsibility for the entire Sermon family name. As a holy knight, swordmaster, and paladin, she declares a test to see if he has the qualification to lead. She demands that he withstand a single strike from her blade, a challenge that leaves the other knights trembling in fear. Ryun realizes this is his unofficial inauguration, as his mother intends to hand over the position of family head right here. A system notification chimes as a new quest is generated, titled Celine's Acknowledgement, marking the start of his most dangerous trial yet. Standing atop the cliff, Celine prepares her final test, demanding that the protagonist take her strike to prove his worth. She promises to heed his words and take full responsibility for persuading the family elders if he successfully withstands her power. He realizes he has no choice but to succeed to protect her from the burden of the family's responsibility alone. With a determined look, the protagonist braces himself as he prepares to face the woman known to the world as the Silver Dragon. The world's nickname for his mother is well earned, as she is both a legendary swordmaster and a powerful paladin. Ryun calculates that she cannot wield both mana and divine energy simultaneously, meaning he must adjust his defense based on which power she chooses. As Celine strikes with blinding speed, the young man observes the golden aura of her blade and moves to intercept. He narrowly avoids a direct hit, realizing that neither blocking nor dodging would have been enough against such overwhelming force. Celine is visibly shocked by his maneuver, wondering exactly what kind of mysterious technique her son just used. Our hero reveals that he utilized a basic ghost skill from a DN called Spirit Form to bypass the mana-based attack. However, the technique is not yet perfect for his current body, resulting in a deep, bloody gash across his chest. Celine rushes to him in concern, but Ryun smiles through the pain, stating he will keep the wound as a token of her love. He tells his mother that the scar will serve as eternal proof that he is her son and that she can trust him. Celine is moved to tears by his conviction, and the system confirms he has officially received her approval. The protagonist earns experience points and a skill rank increase for Spirit Form after successfully evading the Swordmaster's strike. He decides that while the family returns to their territory, he still has several tasks he must complete alone. Ryun hands his mother a letter detailing the steps needed to restore the house's status and bring his sister Maria back. Truno and Sena watch as the young master prepares to depart, mentioning that Knight Commander Alejandro is also deeply worried. Ryun promises to visit them soon, knowing the Knight Commander is a loyal person who will not resent the current secrecy. Later, the protagonist travels to the Kingdom of Darren and arrives at the Martin Intelligence Branch to resume his duties. The receptionist welcomes the 5th grade assassin back and hands him an official letter from the Painton Branch. As Ryun reads the document, he realizes it contains the instructions for his highly anticipated 4th grade promotion exam. A new quest notification appears on his screen. He must assassinate the mage Goma in the territory of Khalid. Intelligence suggests Goma appeared suddenly and created a mysterious dungeon where villagers and mercenaries have been vanishing without a trace. Ryun heads toward the desolate village of Khalid, focused on the twin goals of clearing the dungeon and eliminating the mage. Upon entering the quiet town, he is stopped by an elderly woman who warns him that outsiders should leave immediately. She explains that a dark fog of death has cast over the village, causing every male, whether child or adult, to disappear. The protagonist looks on with a sharp, calculating gaze, processing the strange information that only men are being targeted. She points toward the mountain, explaining that a mage has settled there to devour men and gain magical power. The woman warns him to leave if he wants to live, but she is suddenly interrupted by her daughter-in-law. This younger woman claims the old lady has lost her mind since losing her son and shouldn't be taken seriously. She dismisses the dark rumors as ridiculous nonsense and warmly directs the protagonist toward a nearby inn. Ryun notices the daughter-in-law's attitude is the exact opposite of the old woman's, feeling as though she desperately wants him to stay. The elderly mother continues to scream that the mage will devour him, but she is dragged away by the smiling younger woman. Our hero recalls a warning from Sapphire's letter about rumors of villagers sacrificing outsiders to the mage instead of their own men. He decides to head to the inn first, trusting his gut that he shouldn't rush to hunt the mage immediately. Relying solely on provided information is a mistake he refuses to make, sensing there is someone else he must meet. Later that evening, Ryun sits in the inn and listens as the innkeeper confirms that the disappearance of men is indeed true. She explains that the local lord sent soldiers to investigate, but they found nothing, forcing the villagers to hire a fixer. The villagers pooled their own expensive gold to hire the Martin Guild, hoping the renowned assassins could resolve the crisis. Ryun realizes the villagers, not the lord, made the official request, which explains why the compensation was so steep. The innkeeper warns him not to stay long, just as a group of armored mercenaries enters the building. The newcomers are a party of silver-rank mercenaries, including a mage, who have come to meet their client for the dungeon raid. Ryun observes their silver badges, noting that they must be skilled, yet he senses they are arrogant about the task. At that moment, a young woman in a red cloak named Ravina approaches Ryun's table and asks to sit down. She introduces herself with a charming smile, revealing that she was sent by Sapphire as a helper for the raid. Ryun is annoyed that they sent a guide instead of another assassin, especially since she loudly uses his name. Our hero quickly shushes Ravina, angry that she is calling out his name so carelessly in an open public space. Ravina fangirls over him, claiming it is an honor to meet the talent everyone in the Martin branch is talking about. She apologizes for her excitement, admitting it is her first time seeing a real Assassin Guild member in person. Meanwhile, the silver-rank mercenaries grumble about the client taking too long, mentioned they gave up a troll hunt for this payoff. They hope this dungeon raid leads to their own promotion, unaware that the hidden assassin is watching them. Ryun realizes the mercenaries haven't noticed his presence yet and labels them as complete rookies for their lack of awareness. He watches them with a cold gaze, knowing they have no idea how truly terrifying the target dungeon actually is. She realizes they are overconfident, relying solely on their mage to carry them through the unknown dangers of the dungeon. Ryun watches silently as the red-haired mage across the room remains stoic, seemingly aware of the adventurer's limitations. Right then, the elderly woman from the village entrance, Grandma Sarman, enters the inn to meet her hired help. She reveals herself as the client, shocking Ryun as she empties a bag of gold coins onto the table in front of the mercenaries. The old woman tearfully pleads with them to defeat the wizard at the foot of the mountain and bring back her son's remains. The mercenaries' eyes sparkle at the sight of the fortune, and their leader arrogantly promises that the Iron Shield will complete the request without fail. Grandma Sarman pulls out a family heirloom, a golden ring with a large purple gem, offering it as extra payment to ensure her son's body is found. Ryun's system suddenly reacts, updating the legacy of Veda Quest with a notification about a map containing the location of a hero's soul. The protagonist stares at the ring with an intense, glowing gaze, realizing it is the very item he needs to complete his new undead servant. The mercenary boss snatches the ring, laughing at the unexpected windfall and dismissing it as just another cheap trinket. Later that night, the mercenaries set up camp in the forest and perform a magic appraisal on the mysterious ring. The party's mage confirms it is definitely a magic item of a level she cannot identify, causing the group's hopes to soar even higher. They celebrate the idea of getting a treasure and other potential magic items from a country dungeon for such a simple job. Meanwhile, Ryun watches them from the shadows, criticizing their lack of basic information gathering before charging into a dangerous zone. Ravina notes that Ryun has a look on his face that says the mercenaries lack the basics of their trade. She teases him about being more of a supervisor than a helper, But our hero remains focused on the treasure they just acquired. He admits he only followed them because he couldn't leave the hero's soul in their hands, despite their lack of preparation. Ravina playfully suggests that they should just kill the mercenaries and take the ring for themselves. The protagonist firmly rejects the idea, reminding her that assassins are not common mountain bandits or robbers. Moments later, the silver rank mercenaries reach the glowing blue entrance of the mountain dungeon. Under the light of the full moon, Ryun grows irritated with Ravina's constant chatter, demanding she quiet down to maintain stealth. Ravina playfully dismisses his anger, pointing out that the silence ring she provided ensures they remain undetected. The protagonist retorts that the ring was a guild-issued item, not a personal gift from her. Still, Ravina continues to praise our hero, calling him a rising star for receiving a named request immediately after becoming an official member. She brings up the rumors of him assassinating Guruta Ani and the massive 100 gold fortune paid by the Rose family. Ryun is shocked to hear the amount, realizing that Saintine Rose dumped the entire reward into the guild instead of paying him directly. He grumbles about the massive fees he will lose, but he soon realizes this was likely a calculated move by Saintine. She likely made such a public scene to ensure the news of her family's survival and his involvement reached him. Meanwhile, our boy stops Ravina from speaking as they reach the entrance of the dungeon, noticing the mercenaries entered without scouting. He notes that while there is only one path forward, the situation feels far too lucky to be a mere coincidence. He realizes the appearance of a map for a hero's soul implies a quest difficulty that matches his true capabilities. The protagonist suspects that the system is finally starting to look like the proper Adeon system he once knew. Suddenly, horrific screams erupt from within the dungeon, followed by the unmistakable sound of clashing weapons and a massive explosion. Ryun and Ravina watch as smoke billows from the entrance, wondering if the mage has already engaged the mercenary unit. The noises stop abruptly after only 30 minutes, leaving a haunting silence hanging over the dark cavern. Noting that a silver-ranked mercenary unit was wiped out in just half an hour, he concludes that the dungeon is dangerous enough to crush a mage of that caliber with terrifying speed. Despite the danger, he decides they must enter now while the traps are still triggered and haven't had time to reset. Knowing the nature of the traps will give them more options, our hero prepares to move, earning a look of admiration from Ravina. However, as they step inside, Ryun suddenly halts, sensing something fundamentally wrong with the magical atmosphere. Right then, Ryun activates the blue earth breathing technique and discovers that the entire entrance is covered by a massive illusion array. He explains that the mercenaries likely fell into a trap before they even set foot inside the actual dungeon. 20 minutes earlier, the mercenaries were seen hallucinating, with their captain losing his mind and attacking his own teammates amidst phantom flames. Ryun notes that this nasty type of magic array corrupts vision without dealing physical damage, making it nearly impossible to detect. A skilled mage might have dispelled it, but anyone walking ahead of the mage would have triggered it blindly. Our boy recalls about a spell called Detect Trap for scanning ahead, of course. She asks curiously that if he is talking about these guys. Deep inside the dungeon, the air is thick with the scent of blood and residual mana. The illusion magic has reached its peak. The red-haired mage, her eyes wide with terror, screams for everyone to halt, but it is far too late. Driven by the phantom image of a treasure-hoarding monster, the captain plunges his sword through his own teammate, his eyes glowing with an eerie dark purple light. The mage desperately tries to analyze the complex illusion, chanting for the incarnation of scorching heat to grant her the power to snap them out of it with a fire blast. However, before she can finish her spell, dark shadowy figures leap from the darkness. The mercenaries are systematically slaughtered, not by the dungeon's traps, but by their own hands and the hidden horrors lurking in the mist. As the last of the mercenaries fall, Ryun steps into the blood-stained clearing, his expression cold and analytical. He notes that the illusion didn't just confuse them, it turned them into the dungeon's own traps, tearing each other apart. He observes the traces on the ground, confirming his suspicion. While the mercenaries took fatal wounds, their souls are missing. Someone has dragged them deeper inside. Strangely, there are no drag marks from heavy armor, implying the attackers took the mage and left the others behind as useless corpses. Ryun begins to piece together the dark truth behind Goma the mage. He hypothesizes that Goma has an outside collaborator, someone who can move freely through the village, subdue adult men without a trace. By framing Goma, they lure in fresh mercenaries and adventurers to be used for inhumane experiments and also transport them to the dungeon to avoid prying eyes. Suddenly, Ryan's green eyes ignite with power as he decides to take the offensive. He activates a phantom skill called Soul Recon, releasing a swarm of small, glowing green spirits to scout the complex layers of the dungeon. He discovers a hidden space deep within the earth that his detection couldn't initially reach, the heart of Goma's scheming. While the danger level has already exceeded a grade 4 exam, Ryun remains undeterred. He tells Ravina to return to the village while he handles Goma, but she refuses, claiming that running away would disgrace the Martin name. As they venture further, Ryun realizes Ravina is peculiar for a support member, wondering if she has another motive. Meanwhile, deep in the shadows, Goma the mage stares into a glowing purple crystal ball. He watches Ryun and Ravina with a sinister grin, mocking the Martin rats for finding their way down to his lair. The tension in the dark cavern remains high as Ryun and Ravina continue their descent. Ravina, maintaining her playful facade, asks Ryun to protect her if things go south, flashing a bright, charming smile that only leaves the protagonist looking physically exhausted. He dryly promises to do what he can, warning her not to blame him if he fails. He notes that her survival so far has been a matter of pure luck, but his sharp eyes remain focused on the path ahead. Deep within his hidden laboratory, Goma the mage watches the duo through a glowing crystal ball. He is furious, slamming his fist onto the table as he realizes the intruders are systematically dismantling the very traps that were supposed to be impassable. Goma is baffled, questioning if the guild's intelligence was wrong about sending a mere grade 5 assassin. Despite his frustration, he sneers at the screen, revealing his lovely ratmen, horrific, artificially created chimeras encased in green fluid, that he intends to use as fodder to devour the Martin rats before they reach him. Back in the tunnels, Ravina showcases her surprising utility. She skillfully disables a complex trap trigger in the current sector, earning a rare nod of respect from Ryun. He realizes she isn't just dealing with physical traps. She is utilizing high-level magic stones to sever the flow of mana in magical arrays. Even if she is borrowing the power of an item, Ryun acknowledges her incredible talent for understanding mana structures. When he asks one last time if she intends to go back, she pouts, claiming she is too scared to navigate the tunnels alone after what happened to the mercenaries. The conversation is abruptly cut short as a swarm of shadowy monsters lunges from the darkness. Ravina screams in terror as a massive, purple-eyed creature, a ratman, leaps directly at her. He identifies the creatures immediately, realizing why only men were missing from the village. Goma is using them as raw material to revive the extinct art of creating ratman chimeras. Goma watches the battle through his crystal ball, cackling with glee and mocking Ryun for thinking he can break through a swarm of his proud creations. He believes the secret of creating ratmen vanished with the Black Wizards in the last Great War, making his army invincible. However, his laughter dies in his throat as he watches Ryun fight. In his past life in Adeon, Ryun hunted these specific bastards until he was sick of them. He tears through the swarm with a predatory smile, handling the chimeras more easily than simple goblins. Goma begins to tremble, terrified by the realization that he is facing an assassin who is intimately accustomed to dealing with the horrors of the Black War. Suddenly, a mysterious tall man in a wide-brimmed hat and scarf enters the chamber, puffing on a pipe. He coldly reminds Goma of the conditions for lending him the forbidden book, telling the panicked mage to focus on his experiments and leave the intruders to him. He calls Goma the treasure of the territory, but warns him against doing anything beyond research. The stranger dismisses the assassin as a mere bug from Martin, his eyes glowing with a sharp, lethal intent. Back in the tunnels, Ryun examines a broken dagger left by a ratman. He notes that the weapon is made far too well. It's a standardized, high-quality piece of equipment that neither a simple country mage nor a primitive monster could produce. He explains to Ravina that while ratmen naturally take a year to evolve into orc-level warriors, Goma is using a forbidden, accelerated method, turning kidnapped humans directly into monsters. Ryun lays out a chilling hypothesis. The mastermind behind this isn't just a rogue mage. The sheer quantity of high-quality weapons and the efficiency of the traps suggest the involvement of the local lord, Kazan Khalid, and the actual executor, the head of the Khalid Knights, Lord Caden Khalid Bai, sacrificing his own impoverished people. The lord is building a secret, monstrous army. Ravina is horrified by the inhumanity, but her suspicion shifts back to Ryan. She asks how a simple assassin knows so much about forbidden ratman creation techniques. Ryan brushes it off as various circumstances, though his internal thoughts are far more complex. The duo is suddenly ambushed by a hidden ratman archer, but Ravina surprises Ryan by pulling out a concealed crossbow and nailing the monster right between the eyes. She playfully reminds him that support members receive combat training too. As they reach the center of the dungeon, Ryun senses a massive mana source just ahead, the heart of the magic traps. Suddenly, a giant spiked flail crashes into the ground, and a massive, purple-eyed ratman ogre emerges from the shadows, roaring with hunger. Ravina screams in terror as the beast looms over them, but Ryun's eyes glow with a cold, green light, ready to face the Lord's ultimate creation. The battle in the heart of the dungeon reaches a fever pitch as the ratman ogre swings its massive spiked flail. Ravina watches in disbelief as Ryun prepares to parry the heavy weapon with a mere dagger. To her shock, a brilliant cyan energy erupts from his blade, a mana sword. She is left wondering how a rank 5 assassin could possibly possess such advanced combat techniques. Ryun, focused on the counterattack, barks at Ravina to stop trying to pierce the ogre's hide directly and instead use the nearby dungeon traps to their advantage. Our hero activates search info, revealing that the Ratman ogre is level 20, putting its power on par with the Manslayer. Ryun realizes he could win easily with his necromancer powers, but it's far too early to reveal his true hand. Instead, he pushes his physical limits, triggering body acceleration and body control. As his agility and strength stats surge, he enhances his mana sword, significantly increasing his cutting power. With a predatory smirk, he weaves through the ogre's attacks, despite the high risk to his current body. As Ryun draws the beast's focus, he triggers a series of lethal debuffs: Curse of Body Weakening, Curse of Slowness, and Curse of Skin Defense Weakening. Sensing the perfect opening, he shouts for Ravina to release the trap. A wall panel slides open and a volley of heavy arrows slams into the weakened ogre, pinning it down. Ryun follows up instantly, delivering a final mana-charged strike that brings the massive chimera crashing to the ground. Ravina celebrates, thinking the fight is over, but Ryun snaps at her to stay on guard. His instincts are proven right as a shadow descends from the ceiling. The mysterious man in the wide-brimmed hat, the executor who was earlier with Goma, launches a surprise attack. He strikes with a speed and ferocity that catches even the heightened Ryan off guard. As the stranger's blade clashes against Ryan's glowing dagger, his eyes gleam with a sadistic joy. The clash in the heart of the dungeon intensifies as Ryan parries a lethal strike from the mysterious traveler. The man smokes his pipe with eerie calm, impressed that a grade 5 assassin can wield a mana sword. However, Ryun's body begins to fail him. Archon's curse is activating, a backlash from his previous fight with the Ratman ogre. His mana and stamina recovery slow to a crawl, forcing him to use the Blue Earth cultivation method just to stay standing. Despite his weakened state, Ryun mocks the stranger, identifying him as a knight by his sword stance. The stranger laughs, introducing himself as Caden Khalid, the knight commander and younger brother of the local lord. Ryun quickly signals Ravina to stay back, knowing that dungeon traps are useless against a sword expert of Caden's caliber. As Caden launches a lightning-fast assault, Ryan manages to evacuate Ravina from the crossfire, earning a mocking compliment from the commander for being gentlemanly. Just as the duel reaches a breaking point, a horrific scream echoes through the chamber. A figure collapses, a person who looks like a normal human boy but has the haunting, red-eyed gaze of a monster. Goma the mage emerges from the shadows, cackling with delight. He explains that this is a rare specimen, a Ratman that can switch between human and monster forms. While it lacks combat power, it possesses exceptional stealth and residual human memories. Goma reveals that he used this traitorous trait to manipulate the village, using the boy to lure in men and steal the mercenary's golden ring. Goma gloats that even an elite assassin like this girl is still human and prone to falling for emotional traps involving innocence. He mocks the idea that anyone would expect a human to be used as a living trap. However, Ryun's expression remains cold and unfazed. He looks at Goma with a predatory smirk, telling the mage that he is leisurely babbling. Our hero is actually thankful that the primary target has finally revealed himself in person, saving him the trouble of a long hunt. The mage remains arrogant, believing he holds the upper hand as the boy monster restrains Ravina. Caden Khalid, the knight commander, scoffs at Ryan's grade 4 status, mocking his weak defense despite his use of a mana sword. Caden reveals that they knew the Martin Guild was coming all along. In a twisted turn, Caden himself had provided the advance payment for the villagers' request to lure in high-quality mercenaries for their Ratman experiments. To the Khalid brothers, the villagers are nothing more than resources. This cold admission fuels Ryun's resolve. He noting that their long-winded bragging bought him enough time for his mana penalty to wear off. Goma dismisses this as a bluff, confident in their superior numbers and Caden's sword expertise. However, Ryun's eyes glow with a terrifying intensity as he finally reveals his trump card. He activates a high-level ritual, and to the horror of everyone present, he raises the fallen Ratman ogre as an undead. Goma is stunned, screaming in disbelief as he realizes Ryun is a necromancer. The undead ogre launches a brutal assault on Caden, who manages to strike it down with blinding speed. Caden mocks the undead as a weak trump card, but his victory is short-lived. Ryun reveals that the ogre's blood was contaminated by a lethal curse before it was raised. As Caden strikes the creature, the curse transfers to him, causing his vision to blur and his strength to wither. As the knight commander sinks into the darkness of the curse, Ryun turns his gaze toward the terrified Goma. He reminds the mage of his boast about having an army of soldiers left. With a massive surge of cayenne mana, Rian summons his own legion of blood-stained undead ratmen. He looks at the trembling mage with a cold, predatory smile, asking a final, chilling question. Your soldiers and my soldiers. Which side do you think is stronger? Meanwhile, Caden slashes fiercely through the endless horde of summoned undead monsters with his glowing blade. Rian watches from the ground, noting the knight is undeniably strong in combat. However, Rian coldly points out that Caden has clearly never battled a true necromancer before today. The protagonist reminds the struggling knight that human stamina always has a strict and fatal limit. Soon after, heavy blood violently spurts into the air as the endless undead overwhelm the exhausted swordsman. A golden ring drops to the cold stone floor, revealing it as the missing family heirloom. Ravina silently remembers the sad old woman who begged the mercenaries to return her son's bodies. Right then, Goma gleefully uses the boy as a hostage, threatening the cornered heroes. Suddenly, human monster strikes arrogant mage from behind, causing him to cough up thick blood. The shocked mage realizes the monster's self-destruct seal is broken as the boy quietly thanks them. A massive blast of golden fire completely engulfs the dark room as Ryun shields his face. Moments later, a system screen updates his quest, suddenly granting a map to the hero's soul. The young man closely inspects the glowing gold ring left behind in the smoking, ruined rubble. Out of nowhere, whoosh, an arrow flies in and snatches the ring away midair. Before Ryun can even react, he turns around and freezes. The ring is already in Ravina's hand, and before anyone can stop her, she slips it onto her finger, smirks, and with a satisfied laugh says, "Excellent." Without warning, Ravina launches a fierce attack, forcing Rian to dodge her intense purple magic strikes. Golden flames rapidly burn his undead, instantly reflecting the painful magical impact directly back to the caster. She smiles maliciously, openly revealing she already knew he was a dark necromancer all along. The young man warmly smiles back, admitting his own surprise. Ryun casually asks if she uses a hidden switch to easily change her personality and mana. The girl confidently grins while holding a pink gem, noting they are competing to surprise each other. Blazing bright flames loudly erupt around her as the young man summons a massive green flaming skeleton. He stares her down with sharp eyes and asks directly if she is truly Veda's disciple. The girl smiles brightly amidst the blazing flames, asking the protagonist if he thinks this is just a contest to scare each other. Setting that thought aside, she suddenly dashes forward with blinding speed, leaving a glowing trail of bright light. The young man watches in pure shock as she instantly appears right in front of his nose. She aggressively grabs his dark collar, pulling him close to intensely ask if he is truly the legendary necromancer Veda's disciple. The young man wonders internally where the absolute secret of his dark abilities could have possibly leaked from. He knows for certain that neither his mother nor the loyal Sermon family would ever reveal his true nature. He briefly ponders if a smiling woman in a red dress from the Rose family might be responsible for the leak. Back in the present, he breaks free from her strong grip, noting she acts quite relaxed for someone whose true intentions remain unknown. The girl playfully hugs his arm with a cute smile, making the protagonist wonder if she freely switches personalities on command. He looks highly annoyed and directly demands to know who she exactly is beneath the cheerful act. She grins widely, confidently challenging him to guess her true identity right there in the dark ruins. He silently recalls how her incredible skills and complete lack of fear always seemed highly suspicious for a simple auxiliary member. Realizing she is actively testing him, he calmly asks what his exact reward will be if he correctly guesses her true identity. She cheerfully praises his sharp intelligence, happily declaring that she absolutely loves making high-stakes bets. She quickly promises to grant him any single wish he strongly desires if he actually manages to guess her real name correctly. The young man smirks, quickly asking what his exact punishment will be if he happens to guess her name incorrectly. She playfully suggests that he must grant her whatever she wishes, like becoming her loyal servant for the rest of his life. He realizes her bold demand strongly implies she possesses a very high status to easily command an elite assassin. She playfully winks and starts counting down from 5, completely confident that she will easily win the dangerous wager. Just as she finishes her quick countdown, the protagonist confidently smiles and clearly calls her by her real name, Lavan Asan. Her eyes widen in absolute shock before she immediately launches a fast, explosive magical strike directly at the young man. She furiously grabs him again, angrily demanding to know exactly how he easily discovered her deeply hidden identity. He internally notes that despite her renowned assassin family background, she still reacts exactly like an immature, easily provoked child. He clearly remembers how the Sermon family once gathered secret intelligence on the hidden youngest daughter of the Asan family. The retired family head had promised a powerful alliance if they could locate the missing girl during the ongoing war. The young man had diligently memorized all the detailed documents regarding her exact physical appearance and trivial habits. Suddenly, a hooded woman with a glowing aura steps out of the shadows, calmly asking to take over the intense interrogation. The protagonist is genuinely shocked, quickly realizing an incredibly skilled escort had completely hidden her presence from his sharp senses. Lavin aggressively pins him down, furiously warning him to choose his next words carefully since very few know her secret. He smirks confidently, cleverly pointing out that betting on an identity so few people know proves her wager was completely rigged. The young girl freezes in stunning disbelief, instantly realizing the clever young man has easily seen right through her scam. Ravina glares back furiously amidst her blazing flames, stubbornly blaming him for confidently proposing the impossible bet originally. The young man smoothly asks if he can easily consider this as winning another bet in their game. The annoyed girl reluctantly agrees to his terms, demanding a proper explanation of how he discovered her name. She aggressively promises to grant him one more wish if he actually tells the complete truth right now. However, her eyes glow with deadly intent as she viciously threatens to kill him if he spouts nonsense. Meanwhile, the protagonist internally realizes he is already riding a dangerous tiger and cannot easily back down now. He turns toward the hooded escort, boldly confirming their earlier suspicions by openly declaring he is Veda's disciple. Ravina looks utterly confused, clearly stating she has absolutely no personal connection to the legendary necromancer Veda whatsoever. The young man agrees, deviously deciding to start his grand deception with a carefully crafted, highly believable lie. He smoothly claims he never received teachings directly from Veda, but rather from a mysterious master from the Empire. Suddenly, the powerful escort interrupts him, radiating intense dark magical pressure that severely hurts the young man's head. Right then, the protagonist quickly flashes a secret hand signal, telling the shocked escort not to worry anymore. The escort silently backs down as the young man continues his fabricated story with a confident, calm smile. He boldly claims his mysterious master actually had a very deep personal connection with Ravina's deeply hidden mother. Lavin stares in pure shock as the protagonist internally notes her mother's mysterious death was never thoroughly investigated. He smoothly lies, claiming his master specifically sent him to the Martin branch to carefully contact House Hassan. He explains his master wanted him to find the beloved daughter of his dearest friend hidden within the family. The angry escort reveals Ravina's mother passed away giving birth while being completely hidden by the househead. She angrily summons her fiery magic, viciously threatening to kill the young man for daring to mock them. At that moment, Ryun's eyes glow brightly with green magic as he cleverly explains the mother's spirit visited his master. Soon after, Ravina immediately bursts into heavy tears, desperately screaming to know if her beloved mother left any final words. However, the momentary vulnerability quickly shifts back to a cold intensity. Ravina warns Ryun that if he is lying, she will make him wish he were dead. She demands proof of his claims soon, emphasizing the danger he faces if his words are found to be hollow. Despite the threat, her escort comforts the weeping young lady, signaling a deep, protective bond. Ryun, ever the opportunist, tells Ravina to drop the act, knowing her clumsy persona was just a cover for her true objective. Ryun admits he hasn't even told his wish yet, playfully suggesting that because Ryun's master and her mother were close friends, they can be friends regardless of status. She even teases him about their ages, claiming to be 15 while he is only 13, though Ryun remains unimpressed by her attempts at bonding. The duo proceeds to the center of the dungeon, where Ryun uses his necromantic perks to authenticate a magic circle. They discover the Ratman manual, a relic of black magic. Ravina's escort takes charge of the book, revealing it is actually just a copy, not the original. Lavin explains that she must hand it over to her family as irrefutable proof of the Ratman incursion. In exchange for the manual, she promises to ensure Ryan is properly compensated by the guild, even suggesting extra pay for his experience in taking down Kaden. Ryun reflects on the dark conspiracy involving Goma and the Khalid brothers. They weren't just committing atrocities, they were building a monstrous army to overthrow the state. Ravina assures him that traitors like Lord and Khalid won't survive the night, likely meeting their end at the hands of her family's guard. When the conversation turns to the corpses of Goma and Kaden, Ryun's eyes gleam with greed. He reminds Ravina that she promised him everything except the manual, meaning 2 high-level bodies are now his to claim as tempting materials. As the mission concludes, Ryun tells Ravina he needs to depart to fulfill a stop regarding his master's dying message. While she lets him go, the escort delivers a final, lethal warning. Try to run, and I'll kill you. Standing atop a high cliff overlooking the territory, Ryun activates the map within the Golden Ring. A massive pillar of light erupts in the distance, marking a specific location. With a look of grim determination, Ryun watches the signal, knowing he has finally found it, the location of the hero's soul. Following the map's light, Ryun arrives at a secluded area where an ordinary-looking stone tomb stands. Though it appears plain at a glance, he is certain this is the place the map indicated, the location of Veda's quest and the hero's soul. As he approaches, the stone slab slides open, revealing a hidden entrance. Ryun descends the stairs into a quiet underground chamber. He activates Soul Search, sending out small ghost-like spirits to scout. To his surprise, there are no traps, which actually makes the atmosphere feel even more eerie and unsettled. He reaches a grand hall where a massive stone tablet is inscribed with ancient text. Ryun immediately realizes this isn't the standard Drea language. It is spirit language, a secret tongue used to interpret the language of souls. Only a true necromancer master can reach this level of understanding. As the legendary Veda's chosen, Ryun reads the message. A message to the disciple. This is my gallery and the grave of my friend. To enter the inner sanctum, the tomb demands a proper entrance fee. Since the location holds a hero's soul, Ryun realizes the fee must also be a soul. He first considers using Goma's soul, but the tomb remains silent. Either a three-circle mage's soul isn't the right answer, or it simply isn't enough. He decides it would be a waste to use Kaiden's soul here. Thinking back to the requirements of the quest, Ryun realizes the true answer, the Manslayer's soul. He releases the powerful beast's soul, and the doors finally swing open. A voice echoes, "Welcome to my gallery." Ryun walks through a long hallway lined with paintings. Upon closer inspection, he realizes these aren't ordinary paintings. They are the Gallery of Souls. Ryun stops in front of one specific frame that radiates immense power. He is certain. This is the hero's soul. It belongs to Harmon, the king of the orcs and the orc high chieftain. Harmon was one of Veda's 4 legendary companions. Suddenly, the soul of the orc hero begins to vibrate with intense blue energy. A booming voice fills the room. It addresses the orc hero's soul recognized Ryun as Veda's disciple, understanding that his awakening marked the appointed time, and it prepared to fulfill the promise it had once made to Veda. Before Ryun can react, the ground begins to shake violently, sensing that something is going terribly wrong.